want you to write down one thing every day for 61 days. We were doing a 61-day challenge. For 61 days, one thing you love about yourself. And this was 2 years ago, and it fundamentally rewired my brain, like
Wow.
at a very deep level. I actually really do love the fact that I care so much, even though that's the thing that I hated most when I was married because it was so painful. But now I can look at it and say, no, I actually really do love that part of me.
Buckle up for a new episode of the S.H.E podcast, the show where we have real and raw conversations to inspire and empower you to be seen and heard so you can create balance and everything you want in your life and business. I'm your host, S.H.E, and I'm excited to walk alongside of you on this journey of being seen, heard, and empowered. Welcome to the S.H.E podcast, Be Seen, Be Heard, Be Empowered. I'm your host, S.H.E, and I'm excited to be here today with my guest. I don't know if you're watching us on YouTube, you may see that I'm already a little emotional. I've already cried before we hit this record button because I learned a little bit about my guest and we have some similarities that we've gone through. And so it's been a little emotional conversation behind the scenes here. So who knows where we're going to go with this. But I'm excited for this conversation with Christene Marie. So thank you, Christene, for being here with me today.
Heidi, I told you already, I already feel like we're sisters and we're matching. So, I mean, twins, really.
Yes, if you are watching us on YouTube, you're going to be like, did they plan this? Absolutely not. We did not plan this. So there is something, there's definitely some energy here that we weren't expecting. So yeah, if you're listening to us on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite platforms, go over to YouTube and check out our matching ensemble because
You look so cute.
we do. We look adorable. So, Christene, I'm just going to give everybody a little background about you and then we will dive in. So, Christene Marie guides executives and organizations to position their brands with authenticity to establish empathy-driven connections with their ideal audience through her proprietary knowing process, generating up to 1,400% ROAS. So, Christene, can you share with us how you you work with executives now and organizations? Is this something that you always just wanted to do, or is this something where your journey has brought you to?
Mhm. The funny thing is, no, I totally stumbled into starting my own business. I was asked when I was 18 years old, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to make an impact. I want to make a difference. That was all I knew. I had no idea how. And the answer I got back was, well, you should probably develop a skill set. And good call. Good idea. And so I actually worked with youth right out of high school. I didn't go to college. And I went into public schools and just really was loving on those kids and mentoring. And it's kind of think of older, big brother, big sister. Yeah, a big brother, big sister. I think that that's the name of the program. Something akin to that. It was incredibly meaningful. It was wonderful to be involved in these kids' lives, going through some really tough times. And I actually got married when I was 20, so a child bride. Right after we got married, about a year later, my sister, she and her husband had a 3-week-old baby girl. Her husband was killed by a drunk driver. And it just completely wrecked all of our lives. And my husband and I had her come live with us and her baby girl. I couldn't be investing in those wonderful children anymore. I really needed to kind of stay home and stay focused. And so I actually got digital marketing certified. And during that time, there was just a lot of kind of grief laying dormant, I guess you could say. I just kind of locked everything away because in my perspective, it was, well, she went through a much bigger loss than I did. I don't have much reason or excuse to feel what I feel. So I just really locked all my feelings away and just really invested in her and growing just the skill set of being a digital marketer. And I started working, and frankly, it was never something I was super passionate about. It was just kind of like, okay, well, this seems like something I can do while loving on these people around me. And throughout that time, my sister eventually moved out when her and her baby girl were about her little girl was about 2.5 years old. So it's about 2.5 years later that they moved out. And I was 26 and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I was like, well, I don't want to be giving my money away to the government, and I don't want to be giving all my skill set to grow somebody else's business. And so the biggest fear that I had at the time, moving from employee to entrepreneur, was, well, will I be the smartest person in the room, saying that in air quotes, because will I just stop learning? Will I stop being a student? And I realized that actually, while I had gotten the digital marketing certification, looking back in hindsight, I had really cultivated my skill set through listening to podcasts, listening to the OGs of the podcast world, Amy Porterfield, Gary Vee, just the people who were trying the things in real time. And then I went and tried it and I did it. So it was I was very much so a student, and I've never stopped since. So I was like, okay, great. I won't be the smartest person. So I started my own business when I was 26, and 3 months later, my husband said he wasn't sure if he wanted to stay married anymore. And so that threw in a whole other wrench into my life. I was encouraged to be friend to him rather than play the role of the wife. So I put on my friend hat, took off the wife hat, and figured I'll just deal with my emotions later. So more emotions funneled into kind of that secret room. And and so at 28 years old, he officially left. And I was just completely devastated. And I still had my business at the time, but frankly, it was more so functioning as kind of almost like a lifestyle business where I had built out a team. And the way that frankly I started was that somebody needed digital marketing. They were a company in Dominican Republic. They were looking to launch digital advertising, geo-targeting Walmarts and Giant Eagles, and somebody referred me. So I went and found somebody to execute the work, and I project managed and then found a web developer, and I just like built the team, very bootstrapping, and then got more clients and grew a business. So it was never something with great intent that when I started at 26, and then frankly, it was like, okay, I built this thing. My personal life is falling apart. And so honestly, the professional side was just so not that important because that was never a big vision that I had. My vision was my husband. And when that fell apart, it was like, okay, I need to deal with my emotional closet here because either I'm going to live as a victim for the rest of my life and just point the finger and blame him. Look how, devastated I am. I have someone to blame. Or I can move from victimhood and thus eliminate excuses for why my life fell apart. And so in assuming responsibility, we also assume power. However, it's really uncomfortable because we have to look in the mirror and see what part did we play in something, whether it's your marriage, your business, or any relationship for that matter, falling apart. And so, in assuming radical responsibility over looking in the mirror and coming to know myself, I actually really came to know what I'm called to. So, my business now is something that is in alignment with what I feel called to and what I feel so passionate about. But until I got to know me, I really couldn't know what I felt called to in my business. And so that's the long version, Heidi, of my business and how I kind of came about to doing what I do today.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that, Christene. And I'm so sorry for what your sister went through with the loss of her husband and for you going through the transition of you losing your husband through divorce. But it sounds like everything, every step along the way has brought you to where you are now. You had mentioned in you like you shared, entrepreneurship is a constant learning. I don't think we
Yes.
ever stop learning because if we want to continue growing in this space, we have to get out of our comfort zone. In order to
Yeah.
do that, we have to learn something different. We have to learn how to get comfortable with getting uncomfortable. And we can't be the smartest people in the room. It's important to put ourselves in rooms, but if you find you're the one of the smartest people in the room, it's time to leave that room.
Yeah. Get out.
Otherwise, you're going to stay stuck and stagnant, right?
Yes.
Or you stay in the room to mentor others, to give back, and find a room that you can learn and grow from. Um, so
Love that.
you had mentioned radical responsibility. Can you tell us what is radical responsibility for those who are listening and are like,
Yeah.
what was that?
What does that mean? The way that I actually kind of use that word is effectively so long as we're abdicating responsibility, so long as we're not taking it up. And I really think of it as like think of responsibility as something tangible, right? Like it's something that is something that we grab, like you're picking up weights. Like there is a weight to responsibility, there is a weight to the assumption of it, and we also have the choice to abdicate it, to put it down and to walk away. And in so doing, in picking up the responsibility, we are forced to, and the concept of working out actually really fits here because you have to look in the mirror to check your posture. You have to look in the mirror to ensure that you're not going to hurt yourself in so doing, that those can be heavy weights when you're picking up the responsibility. And so radical responsibility is doing the work to understand what part have I played in this? What is the sole full function of what part that I've contributed? The words spoken, the words unspoken, sometimes those can be the most deadly when we don't actually go with our gut and say what we know to be true. It's really easy to look to everyone else around us and say, well, I didn't say what I knew to be true because, point your finger.
Mhm.
Whereas really that was our responsibility to begin with. We had the feeling that was ours. And so that's where really having a strong sense of self is kind of going hand in hand with radical responsibility because we have to know ourselves well enough to thus be able to assume radical responsibility. And so I actually didn't know who I was. And so there was an element where I actually couldn't even begin to lift the weights because I was so disconnected from self. And so I had lived so much with, I think of it as a navigation system. So my compass was pointed east and west. It was fundamentally broken because I was looking to everyone external around me to tell me who I should be, to help me orient what was north rather than me knowing what was true for me. And my therapist actually called it four wisdom centers. And the wisdom center, there's a cognitive function where our brain is activated. It's, the computer processing, and that from which we derive wisdom. Another is actual energy. Like if I come bounding up to you and I'm like, Heidi, it's so good to see you. You sense the energy, right? So we've got that energy wisdom center. We've got the emotional wisdom center, which is usually in our gut, and we just get a feeling and we can't explain it. Frankly, our brain can't even explain it. we literally, it's because it's a separate wisdom center.
Mhm.
But the more we're completely disassociated from these different wisdom centers and we're only operating from the brain function, which really is the IQ, and we're alleviating the EQ from its job of being able to inform us of that which it knows, we're really not able to do the radical responsibility and the assumption of it. So in terms of kind of picking up those weights, you have to be connected with yourself in all functions in order to pick those up and do justice to be able to analyze, okay, let me do a self audit. What was my part to play in this?
Yeah. So you had mentioned, thank you for sharing all of that. I didn't know about the four centers. When you were sharing your story in regards to your sister and your husband, both
Mhm.
times you're like, I stuffed the emotions down. I just needed to be there for her. And I
Mhm.
became friend to my husband versus
Yeah,
wife, which I'm guessing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is basically you're trying to console him, soothe him, make sure that he's okay without actually abdicating for your own voice and what you were feeling,
right,
and maybe the things that you were missing in the relationship, because
right.
obviously he was missing something, but had you come together and share that together, you would have been able to open that door to different communication.
Mhm.
So how do you go? Because a lot of women, I'm like that too, and I'm learning how to navigate that. We're masculine driven. We own businesses. We're like, we've got to be here for this person. We don't have time to sit in it. We've got to get up and just go and do. And
Yeah,
tomorrow, go to bed, fall into bed, get up, rinse and repeat, and do it over again. And that's not being seen, that's not being heard, and that's not empowering yourself to take care of you. You're
right.
literally just sacrificing ourselves in order to take other people. So, can you share some of the steps? Like, how do you go from being like that, right?
Mm,
And being used to that, and that's your everyday, to all of a
mm,
sudden going, okay, this isn't working. Now I've got to do this. Like, what were the steps that you took to
mm.
get you there, to help get you there?
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that question because it's hard to do that now today, right? I had a pretty big catalyst. I was completely broken. So the brokenness kind of forced me to look in the mirror and be like, okay, how much did I play a part in this? And apart from brokenness, it can be a little bit tricky. So I'm going to share a few things that helped me in that where I was just really devastated. And then I'll share one or two things that helped me today to kind of maintain that practice. So one of the things that I did during that time was I would go on walks with my dog with no music, no phone. I just left my phone at home and I was just walking alone with my own thoughts. And it would I think if all of us did an audit, we'd be shocked at how much we're getting inputs these days. Like we're never not getting inputs. Even to this morning, I showered and turned on my motivational thing. Like it just, we're constantly getting inputs all the time. And to be alone with our thoughts is actually kind of scary because what are we going to find? And I think the uncertainty is where we then avoid because we actually are nervous about what's going to come out. And a lot of times it's not pretty. And so we're like, well, let's just keep shoving it down, shoving it down. And so going for walks with zero inputs, and it doesn't have to be walking, it could be doing something else, running. But I just found that I'm moving my body. And so that helped me not get distracted. And so that was really helpful. Another thing that was really helpful was to kind of eliminate the doing in terms of just being present. And I found that the more I activated my senses, so I was in Hawaii visiting Brandon Turner. He's big in real estate, and I was there for Thanksgiving, and I went to the beach one day, and I brought a candle, and I sat out on the sand so I could feel the sand under my toes. I could feel the breeze. I could smell the candle, and then I saw the ocean. And it was all of those senses being activated that really brought me into the present moment because it's so easy to live in the past or just dream of the future and neglect what's here right now. The only thing that's truly real. The past isn't real anymore, and the future, we hope it's all going to unfold. So those two practices, really being present and allowing my senses to be activated to help me learn how to do that, and then going for walks or runs or some modality sans inputs, just to allow for, if we think of our mind as kind of and our being as a filtration system, we're getting all these inputs, and if we don't have the middle of the funnel working properly and allowing time to be present and process the inputs, it gets clogged up because then we've got too many inputs and not enough outputs to allow for kind of the equilibrium there. And then today I do both of those things, but one of the things that is really helpful for me today is that every morning, I call it vertical alignment. And again, kind of going back to that navigation system, with my compass navigating, what was east and west, now navigating north and now being vertical. I take every morning about 30 minutes to an hour to meditate, pray, journal. Journaling has been something that's probably been one of the most beneficial forms of processing my inputs and even the past that I can think of. And so I have a knowing framework that's also really helped me that I use in my coaching programs, but those practices on the daily are kind of very easily accessible.
Yeah, I love that you shared that, and it's really important. And I know from me being a doer, those are
Mm,
some of the things you mentioned are extremely and have been extremely challenging, which is journaling on a consistent basis. Because
yes.
if you're listening and you're feeling like the same way I've felt through this, knowing I need to do this and also pushing it off or doing it here and doing it there and not being consistent, is you are, like you said, you're scared of what might come up and
Yeah.
I'm going to get real with myself, and it's not going to be pretty. And I
Yeah.
don't get to be blaming other people. I get to look in and
Mhm.
go, okay, you created this. How are you now? How do you get to now create
Mm.
something different? Right.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
really working toward it through the pain. And that can be very
Yes.
scary, especially if you're a doer, right?
Yes.
If you're not used to crying or don't like crying or never gave yourself a chance to cry, this is the perfect segment for you because if literally kicked us off with me crying. I always said I'm not a crier. I would be a stuffer. Like I
Yeah.
stuff it down and just do what I need to do to get through the day and move into the next day. So I love what you shared, especially about like I had visions of me going to the beach and just walking the beach, which I am committed now to doing this week.
Right.
It's really bringing the senses in, getting to see nature, and especially if you're in an area that's warm, like I'm in Florida, so it's super easy for me to go do that. If you're not in a warm area and it's harder for you to get outside, find things that you can do to connect with nature. Maybe it is
Yeah.
grabbing a cup of tea or a coffee and just taking a stroll outside, in the snow and just really looking at the beauty of it, what you're surrounded with. When this
Mhm.
comes out, it won't be winter. So for those of you listening,
Yay.
get outside and go do something. I love how you said you took a walk with your dog without music, without listening to a podcast or anything like that. And I'm like, listen to the podcast because we have a podcast. I want you to listen to it. But that being said, it is really important that you take the input in all of the stuff that's out there that's in your world and take a break from it, like social media. I mean, social media is all filled with all the goodness, right? You'll hear this extreme vulnerability. It's like it's you're getting a lot of emotion in when you're on social media. So taking even a break from that is really good. And understanding that not everybody's life is perfect if that's what you're seeing and that's what you're getting from it. I just really think that a huge gold nugget that I'm taking, and I hope you listening take away, is like really just spend some time with you privately and cut
Mm.
out all the noise. Like, and like you said, when I'm in the shower, I'm always listening to either musical theater because I love musical theater, or I'm listening
Another reason we're twins.
or I'm listening to what am I listening? Or I'm listening to motivation or a
Mhm.
podcast around empowerment, feeling good about yourself, taking action, that type of thing. Um, so Christene, for you, you started a business. You're now in it. You're growing. Can you share with our listeners what is a step that they should be taking when it comes to creating a successful business? What was the biggest thing? I know you shared your challenge, and that one of the challenges was all of a sudden now your husband's like, okay, I don't know that I'm wanting this, which is a
Yeah.
huge blow personally because unfortunately we can't separate the two in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. It's really hard to close that door and go, okay, I'm not feeling this right now inside of my business. But what are some other challenges you had, strategy wise, maybe that you've
Mhm.
overcome, and how did you do it?
That's a good question. I really think that so this is both a challenge and something that I found that's most important for all of us, right? So both me and what I've seen with my clients. And it kind of, I loved everything you just said. I just want to take a moment to thank you even for having this podcast, Heidi, because it's so important. We don't talk about these things because of the perfection we see on Instagram. And
Mm,
it really is daunting to come and be vulnerable because everything else, we don't see the process on Instagram. We see the after.
yeah.
And so I just appreciate what you have here because it's so important. So in terms of challenges, I would say that one of the biggest challenges has been the desire to hide. It is to your point. It's either very, very vulnerable and you show up and you kind of just do like a little dump and then you're like, I remember I literally when I started posting after my husband left and it was like, okay, it was 2022 and I remember kind of my first post like sans divorce. I posted it and then I shut my laptop and I was like, oh no, and I like didn't want to touch my laptop. I was like, I don't want to see what happens. And but there was something, I will say there was something about and I will say there's a fine line between vulnerability and authenticity. Vulnerability in terms of, and I was just talking about this on another podcast the other day, which I so appreciated the question of how do we know kind of the difference between vulnerability and authenticity and ensure that we're not coming forward too soon after a loss, which I really appreciated because we do need to be authentic in our presentation. The vulnerability is like if the wound is kind of oozing and gross and still very messy, that's probably not the time to go public with it. And the reason why we are even talking about going public with vulnerability is because stories are the driving force and the connecting force between humankind. I mean, that's the very thing that drove us together, that made me feel like, man, I've just now got a sister bond with this woman for the rest of my life. And it was because of the story, mutual stories that bonded us. And
Mm,
people, I mean, there's statistics that show this, right? It's not just from our experience, it's data shows that people retain stories 22 times more than facts. And Harvard found that people make purchase decisions based in their subconscious 95% of the time. So we need to be sharing our stories and we need to be coming forth with this authentic presence of who are we? And if we're constantly getting those inputs, we actually never take the time to analyze, is what I'm inputting actually working and really changing my output? Or am I just feeling good because I'm getting all this input and I feel really cool because I'm listening to the next Joe Rogan or
mm,
Heidi Schock? And so the question with this, just kind of coming back to the point of the difference between vulnerability and authenticity, authentic stories are really what catalyzes emotional connection that audiences critically need with the brand. And so we saw this with Amazon. We were doing a social media play with them following an event that they had for their internal staff. And so it was kind of like, how do we announce this? From which mouthpiece? Will we use AWS's mouthpiece, which has 7.5 million followers on LinkedIn, or will we use an executive who has 9,000? And we opted for the latter and really encouraged them to promote the story through the mouthpiece piece of the executive. And as a result, we got 688,000 organic impressions on
Wow.
LinkedIn. The hashtag went trending, and it was all because we positioned her with the kind of the emotional formula that allows for emotional connection, that allows for us to allow for the person to person marketing, so to say. And so, in terms of the challenge, I think it is so easy to hide and it's so easy to have excuses. My excuse has been, well, I just honestly am so focused on my clients that, oops, I don't have time for me. And it's like, well, no, really, I am afraid, my core fear, and I had to get to this point of really understanding it because only when we understand and come to know can we thus experience real change. Otherwise, we're just trying to change something that's rather ambiguous. And our KPIs for the success of that change aren't even clear because we don't even know what the root problem is. So we
Mm.
have to do the work to know what our root problem is. And my root problem is the fear over, and I was actually talking about this in a room this past weekend at Genius Network, Joe Polish and Chris Voss and Nick Peterson, and we were all talking. I mean, I just said it to the room, that my fear is that in coming forward, in publishing my book, in uh, posting on social, in doing these things and activations that frankly I've already done so much work to build and they're just sitting in the wings. My fear is that the narrative that I've held over myself, that I'm not really worthy, I'm not really wanted, will prove to be true because it was already proven once with my husband.
Mm.
And I know cognitively it's not true, but my emotions don't really
Right.
know it's not true. And so then it's like, okay, well, now what's the work I can do to kind of circumvent that? So all that to say, the personal brand building is incredibly important, but a lot of times there are some roots as to what's getting in the way. And so I gave myself a challenge to I've got to post every single day for the next 90 days, and I'm on day like 7. And so I've been doing it. But I'm already 60 days late. I had planned to do it come January 1, but frankly, it was that fear. And in shining a spotlight on it, Brene Brown says this, in shining a spotlight on shame, it begins to wither. Its voice loses its hold because now I know that that's the voice of shame.
Mm.
Otherwise, I think it's truth because I haven't identified, well, no, actually that's shame and that's actually derived from my husband or maybe other experiences in childhood.
Mm.
So that's one of the biggest challenges that I faced are the inner critics and inner narratives that I haven't worked through in order to cultivate what we all need to do, which is the proprietary brand.
Wow, so much there. And thank you. So if you're listening and you're feeling like, you know what, I'm not worthy of this goodness, or I'm not worthy to create this, it's good for somebody else, but not for me. It's easy for them, but not for me. Of course, they've gone through this. They can now share it. You're not alone, right? We all have feelings of unworthiness. We all have those inner critics. I love how you shared that you like posted and ran, and that's things that we need to do. Those are things that we need to do inside of our business. And again, when the wound is oozing, when it's raw, when it's new, we don't want to be sharing there. That's an important piece. And I think that's something about whether you're a man or a woman in business, you need to be, sharing your story. Stories sell, facts tell, right? And I hate to say stories sell, but it's true. That's how people connect with you. And like you said, there's a certain percentage of people that buy on subconsciously and on emotion. And that's because they connect with you and your journey and your story. And when I started my business, I hid for so long because I was like, who wants to hear my story? Nobody wants to hear my sobness, what I went through. Like they're going through their own stuff. But people connect with you because of that. And again, if it's brand new, real and raw, like, fresh and raw, this is not the time. You get to heal, you get to move through that process yourself. And then when you're on the other side of it, and it may not be fully healed ever,
Right.
right? Like you say, things still come up. Those feelings of unworthiness because of what you went through with your ex-husband still show up. And again, that's growth. That's going to
Mhm.
happen. And those are how we go deeper and we start peeling away the layers of our onion and going, okay, now where is this coming from and where is this coming from? And that's how we get closer to our true authentic self and
Mhm.
where you can start sharing that authenticity out with the world. And again, when you're starting to do this, you could feel like a fraud, right? Imposter syndrome kicks in. You're like, oh my gosh, who am I to do this? But the more that you do it, and right, like I don't think practice ever makes perfect, but putting that kind of mantra together, the more you do it, the easier it will become, and the less you'll be like posting and running, the more
Yes.
you'll be posting and owning it. And now I know years later it's so much easier for you from when you first started doing that. I'm sure you're not slamming your computer down now. Maybe when it comes to like some certain things, but now that you've done it so much, you're like posting it and going, yes, this is who I am.
Yeah.
You own it. Yeah.
I love that. And frankly, I need to actually do still a better job of congratulating myself because there is an element where I actually was talking to people about this weekend. There's something about if we don't have kind of a reward system, we're not really training our subconscious that we just did a good job. So
Mm.
we're almost like intentionally putting ourselves in an uncomfortable position and then not saying, "Yay, we did it. Like, let's freaking go." It's so I think it's really important that I actually, as you said that, I'm like, man, I need to do that because otherwise at some point it will start feeling like an exciting thing. And I actually found that so one of the things that really helped me get into the actual belief that I am worthy was my best friend challenged me. He was like, I want you to write down one thing every day for 61 days. We were doing a 61-day challenge. For 61 days, one thing you love about yourself. And I was like, I will go run another marathon. Thank you very much. I will not do that. And the feeling that I had towards like no way was showed me, okay, I need to go do this. And this was 2 years ago, and it fundamentally rewired my brain, like at
Wow.
a very deep level. And I think that using that kind of and eventually I got into the rhythm where I was able to say, oh no, I actually really do love the fact that I care so much, even though that's the thing that I hated most when I was married because it was so painful. But now I can look at it and say, no, I actually really do love that part of me. And but it took practice and it took that kind of rewiring. You know, guys, we've been patterning our brains have been patterned for so long to think a certain way, and our emotions have been patterned for so long in a certain way. And so we have to set a time limit for yourself. I believe it's the 60 days to form a new habit.
Mm.
So do this with folks in your network of I'm going to create a new habit for myself. And the first 7 days can be really, really hard. So I'm on the seventh day. And I think in the next over the next week or so, it'll be more habitual and I'll feel less like, oh gosh, I gotta write another post today. And obviously there's different ways to go about it, right? In terms of how to make it easier. But I think that to your point, there's an element of one just doing it, as people say, like make the commitment, have other people keep you accountable, people that you're going to be sad to let down. When I wanted to wake up earlier, I had somebody keep me accountable that I actually really respected, and I was like, I can't let them down. I need to
Do that
follow
too.
through on this.
Yeah.
And so that was helpful. And then eventually our brains and our bodies do change and they begin to kind of have that dopamine rush like I did it. I did it. So I think that that's something I need to incorporate in this posting cadence and really allow for that because it really does rewire our brains.
Yeah, making that commitment is key and also having an accountability partner. But like I always say, and you brought this up, which is great and a good reminder, don't bring in an accountability partner that you know will let you slide. Like if you're wanting to lose weight and oh, you're going to make a commitment to walk with your best friend or with your sister when they call in the morning and you're like, "Oh, I'm just too tired." They're like, "Okay, we'll do it tomorrow." That's not your accountability partner.
Yep.
You get to call on somebody that like you said that Christene just shared. You don't want to let them down. You highly respect them, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to feel horrible if I let them down when they check in on me, or that I'm supposed to be checking with them and I haven't followed through. That's a
Yep.
key piece in making progress. And again, the 61 days. So for you listening, we're challenging you. If you are in your business and you don't post every day, then do what Christine is doing. Have some fun with it and DM her and let her know that you're doing it with her.
Yes,
Post
I would.
every day. I'd love to support you and cheer you on, but post every day and set that up for you or create a journal and write one thing that you love about yourself each and every day
Mhm.
for 61 days. I think that is really, really important. And I'm committed to doing that today, starting that today. I love that. It's like that reminds me of that exercise. Putting your hand on the mirror and telling yourself I love you. That is a really hard exercise when if
Mhm.
you haven't ever done that for yourself, I implore you and I invite you to do that too. Real quick, I know we're running out of time, Christene, but you had mentioned you have your proprietary knowing process. Can you give us a little glimpse of what that looks like?
Yeah, so the knowing process is it's more so on the marketing side. It takes a few different concepts. So I'll run through this fast. So number one is knowing the brand. And for all of us, we all have a proprietary brand like we were talking about. And it really includes doing the work to understand who was I, what are those core memories, and how do they show up today in the mindsets I hold? And then what's my ideal? how do I actually need to, what are those areas that I need to rewire my brain to live in alignment with who I want to become and what I feel called to? What's my vision? So that's the knowing brand piece. Identify 2 to 3 memories. How do they show up today in our mindsets? And then how do we want to kind of rewire and go about living in a different way? So that's really knowing the brand. And there's so much more there that's really just kind of skimming the surface because what that does and knowing our ideal, that usually reflects our values. We have to know what our vision is in order to be able to, and so often, y'all, I've heard story after story. There's so many successful CEOs where they were abandoned as a child by their dad, and now they've started a nonprofit for kids who are, without a father. So the more we're in touch with our stories, the more we actually may even be in touch with our purpose. Because if we're neglecting the pain of the past, we may not be able to see forward to how that's actually playing a part in the difference we're going to make in the world. And so that's knowing the brand. In terms of knowing your audience, this is really where empathy comes into play. So leading with authenticity by knowing who we are in terms of our brand, meeting our audience with empathy. The authenticity and the empathy protect us from manipulation when we go and market to them. It protects us from eliciting emotions and then making them make choices where, frankly, if it sans an authentic presence, it's dangerous, right? We're really kind of using emotion in a dangerous way, and emotion can do that. There's a lot of how do I want to say this? There's a lot of immoral marketers. There's a lot of people out there that are kind of playing the game, but they're not doing the work themselves to show up and thus form a mutually beneficial emotional relationship. And so that's why the authenticity of the brand matters so much, to allow for it to be truly empathy, not manipulation in the way that we know and engage with our audience. And so one of the best ways that I really encourage my clients when it comes to knowing your audience is to talk to them. It sounds crazy, I know, mind blowing. But when is truly the last time that you sent an email survey to your list, just saying, hey, we are actually doing a self audit. We really want to serve you better. How can we? And just really understanding how are they currently emotionally predisposed towards you. Also connecting marketing and sales. So many times there's disparity and we're not talking. What are the sales team actually hearing so that that informs our messaging so that we really understand these are the actual pain points. Another modality that we've used to really get to know our audience is the Enneagram, which is a personality test. And we've actually defined, okay, our audience is Enneagram 3, Wing 2, and we get really specific, and that personality test allows for us to identify the core motivation of our audience. And that's really that human emotional component. In addition to, okay, well, this service is going to help them in this regard that's very practical, but it's the emotional transformation. You move from feeling anxious to experiencing peace of mind working with us. That's what we're selling here, right? And then the product is the vehicle in which we're delivering that peace of mind. And then finally, knowing your channels. So a lot of times we think we need to be everywhere at once. Guys, there is so much, especially with AI, it's just so overwhelming. And so really paying attention to, well, where does my niche really hang out and spend time? And you know what? It might be on LinkedIn, not the other places that frankly are a little bit more sexy for you to be. And that's really okay because 41% of millionaires are on LinkedIn and it's getting more crowded now, so get in while it's hot. There's not a ton of competition on LinkedIn right now still, especially with story-driven messaging. You'll really stand out there. So that's the knowing process, knowing your brand, knowing your audience, and knowing your channels so that you can lead with authenticity, meet them with empathy, and then the meeting place is on whichever channel they are.
Yeah, and I love that you said that. So thank you for bringing that up because I feel like in the entrepreneurship world, depending on what you do, people are like, "Oh, I got to be everywhere," because we see certain people everywhere. And again, if you're coming in now, I'm a big believer in podcasting. I love it. I've doubled down on it because it's still a blue ocean. It's
Yeah.
there's 460 million listeners out there and it's growing every day. So if you have a business and you're not podcasting, start yesterday. Like get on there and just have fun with it. It's a fun way to connect with people, network. Like I would have never known Christene otherwise, possibly. So, and you're building a network. And I interviewed a friend of hers on another podcast that I run, and he introduced me to her, and that would have never happened had I not had these platforms. So I think it's key and on knowing where your audience is, right? And really reaching out to them on where they are. And like you said, Christene, LinkedIn is still it's newer compared to the other
Right.
It's a more wide open platform compared to the other ones that are out there. But again, if your target market's not there, then you don't want to spend your time there. So if your people are hanging on Instagram, then talk to them. And that's what Christine is sharing with you. Have conversations. If you have an email list, which you should, key piece in your business. I get to own that I don't email them enough. I'm not connected enough, but reaching out to them and asking questions, letting them know, like, here, I'm here to serve you. What I've been talking about it may not be the one thing that you want help with. So share with me. What do you want help with? Where are you struggling right now? And if I can't help you, I will bring someone then that can. Like really working for them, and being a partner with them versus just somebody who's telling facts on how you can help them specifically when you don't even know necessarily if that's the help that they're looking for. And
Mm,
understanding your client, so their pain points can change depending
mm.
on what's happening in their life and in real time. And there's a lot going on in the world right now. So somebody that may have had a different pain point that you thought a week or two ago may have a different pain point right now that they're struggling with, and you won't know that if you're not asking the questions. So
So
amazingness. And I love YouTube. And I'm not on there enough either. YouTube is great. It's the second search engine after Google. And Google owns it. So if you can be on YouTube and you have information, I would suggest getting out there too. I love
good.
this. Thank you, Christine. So how can people reach out to you and connect with you? Because listeners, you want to reach out to her. She's amazing. So
Oh, thank you. Well, I love that you just said YouTube. Completely agree. ChristineMarie.com. That's the place with all my handles. I am active on all three platforms. I'm actually about to roll out a program here pretty soon where my audience is pretty widespread. So I
nice.
do have to be everywhere,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, ChristineMarie.com is going to be the easiest place and you can see what's at.
Yeah. And your people might be everywhere, and it depending on what you do. And if they are, start with where you know that your people are. And then you don't have to be everywhere when you're starting. Don't overwhelm yourself.
Mhm.
Pick a spot. And then
Good.
once you build that up and you're building your business, then you can start bringing in a team to expand that for you. So you're not feeling overwhelmed, and which is, I'm sure that's what I've done. I felt like I needed to be everywhere and it overwhelmed me. And then when I brought somebody in, I let them handle it and it was easier to do so. So thank you for sharing that. So make sure you go to ChristineMarie.com, connect with her, DM her, follow her, and I can't wait to hear about the new program that you have coming out. So that's exciting. Christine, quick before we go, is there a fun fact about you, something behind the scenes of Christine Marie that we wouldn't know by seeing your website or following you on social?
Yes, I was in a movie. It was a little
Ah,
Hallmark holiday type film, and that was, man, that was like my childhood dream. So in me getting to know myself and doing the work, I realized that that dream still lay dormant, and so I just started speaking it out, and someone heard me, and then 6 to 8 months later called me and was like, "Hey, I need a wife for a movie." And so he didn't even have me audition. I was like, "Is this real?" But it was so much fun. I was able to co-star with him and four others. It was a movie about three couples, six adults, and it was just super cute and so fun.
and it was on Hallmark?
It was similar to Hallmark. It
Okay.
was it was that type of film. It was, I don't even know where it is right now. I'm sure maybe it's still on there. I don't know if it is because it's not Christmas.
Oh,
So
it's a Christmas. Oh, okay. This is another
yes,
thing we have in common. I am a Hallmark movie junkie, and
yes,
I love Christmas. I was having like annual Hallmark Christmas movies with three other women, and we would watch
wow,
one movie, and we'd have a hot cocoa and wine and food, and
that is
we'd look at the
so
hot guy on the show on the movie. Uh, and my dream, like 2 years, what was it, 3 years ago, I was in a PR program, and I'm like, and Hallmark was still doing those daily shows. They don't have them anymore.
yes.
And I was like, I want to be in a Hallmark movie. And I can't believe you just shared. I'm like, okay, I got to pick your brain on how you made that
Heidi,
happen.
you have to.
I want
Oh
to be
my
able so
God.
bad. Yeah, that would be like the epitome of my dreams coming true. So
Okay,
anyway, I can't believe
keep
that right now.
having it.
So thank you for twinning with me today, by the way. This has been so
Yes.
much fun, unexpected. One last thing. Oh, I'm running out of time. Quickly, I like love this conversation. If you could have a conversation with anyone, alive or deceased, political, famous, whoever, who would it be and why?
Well, I'll go with the first person who popped in my head. I actually don't know if this is actually who it would be, but since we're running out of time, Stephen Bartlett. I
Oh,
love his podcast, Diary of a CEO. And that actually is kind of what sparked me doing mine. So him and Jordan Peterson were having a conversation, and I was like, man, what a dream to just have conversations with amazing people all the time. And so I modeled kind of my podcast after him.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Christine, for being here today on the Be podcast. So grateful for your time. Thank you all for listening to Christine and I. If you're watching us on YouTube and you see us twinning, please subscribe and leave a comment for Christine below. Let her know how cute we look. And then if you're listening to us on your favorite platforms like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and you can leave a review, please do. That helps us get our guests and our information out to more people. If you're listening right now and you have a woman, your bestie or a family member or a business bestie that you think would benefit from our conversation today, please let's share this with them and let them introduce them to Christene Marie. So thank you again, Christine, for being here. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much, Heidi. I was just thinking you're so incredibly generous with your time and pumping out all your guests up. It's amazing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So grateful for this, for all of you listening and for you, Christine. Have an amazing rest of your day, and we will see you on the next episode of the Be She podcast. In the meantime, be empowered to be seen and heard.